Tonight, before you pick up your rosary, stop. Because if you do what most Catholics do during prayer, Padre Pio warned that your rosary will never leave the room. It will bounce off the ceiling and fall back to the floor like dead weight. Every bead you count, every Hail Mary you whisper, every mystery you attempt to meditate on, all of it wasted. Not because the rosary lacks power. The rosary is the most devastating spiritual weapon ever placed in human hands. But because there are 5 invisible walls that you have built between your prayer and heaven, and until you demolish them, not a single word you pray will reach the throne of God. I've seen it with my own eyes, or rather, I have felt it. For years I prayed the rosary every single night without exception, and for years nothing changed. My husband was still sick, my son was still distant from the church. My own spiritual life felt like wading through mud. I told myself it was a test of faith. I told myself that God works on his own timeline. But deep inside, in the place where you cannot lie to yourself, I knew something was wrong. My prayers felt hollow, like speaking into an empty room. And it was not until I learned what Padre Pio taught about the 5 blocks that I understood why. That knowledge saved my family. It may have saved my husband's life. And tonight, it might save yours. Padre Pio said something about the rosary that should terrify every Catholic who prays it. He said that out of every 100 rosaries prayed in the world on any given day, fewer than 10 reach heaven. Fewer than 10. The rest are stopped, blocked, intercepted by invisible barriers that the person praying does not even know exist. Imagine that. 90% of all rosaries prayed by faithful Catholics around the world, day after day, year after year, accomplishing nothing in the spiritual realm. Not because God does not listen, God always listens, but because the prayer cannot get through. It is like trying to call someone on a telephone when the line has been cut. You can dial the number, you can speak into the receiver, you can pour your heart out for an hour. But if the line is severed, nothing reaches the other end. Let me tell you something most people do not realize. This is not a metaphor. This is not a spiritual analogy designed to make you feel guilty. This is what Padre Pio described as literal spiritual reality, as real as the chair you are sitting in, as real as the air in your lungs. The spiritual world operates with laws as precise and as unbreakable as the laws of physics. And Padre Pio could see those laws at work every single day. And the worst part, the person praying has no idea. They feel like they are praying. They hear their own voice. They feel the beads between their fingers. They experience the rhythm and the comfort of the familiar words. Everything feels normal. Everything feels right. But in the spiritual world, where Padre Pio could see with perfect clarity, the prayer is going nowhere. It rises a few feet above the head of the person praying and then hits a wall. An invisible wall made not of stone or iron, but of something far stronger, made of the spiritual consequences of the person's own choices. This is what Padre Pio saw, and this is what he tried to warn us about. The story that reveals these 5 walls begins with a man named Marco Pellegrini. He was a farmer from the countryside near Foggia, a sturdy, practical man in his 50s who came to San Giovanni Rotondo in 1955 with a problem that was destroying his life. His farm was failing. His crops had been devastated by drought for 3 consecutive years. His wife was gravely ill with a condition the doctors could not diagnose. His eldest son had been drafted into military service and had not written home in 6 months. And Marco, a devout Catholic who had prayed the rosary every single night of his adult life, could not understand why God was allowing his world to collapse. He had heard about Padre Pio. Everyone in southern Italy had heard about Padre Pio, the priest whose hands bled, the priest who could read your soul, the priest who saw things that no human being should be able to see. And Marco, desperate, decided to make the journey to San Giovanni Rotondo and ask Padre Pio one simple question. Why is God not answering my prayers? He arrived on a Wednesday morning in October. The church was already packed with pilgrims. The line for Padre Pio's confessional stretched out the door and down the steps. Marco took his place in the line and waited. He waited for 5 hours. 5 hours of standing, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, clutching his rosary, whispering prayers, bargaining with God the way desperate people do. If you let me see Padre Pio, I will make a pilgrimage to Rome. If you answer my prayers, I will donate half my harvest to the poor. If you heal my wife, I will never complain again. When Marco finally knelt behind the screen of Padre Pio's confessional, he began to speak. He started to list his sins the way he always did. The small failures, the moments of doubt, the times he had cursed under his breath when the rain did not come. But Padre Pio stopped him. Just as he had stopped Carmela Rossi, just as he had stopped so many others over the years. Padre Pio raised his hand and said something that Marco did not expect. "Your rosary is dead." Marco did not understand. He said he prayed it every night. He had not missed a single night in over 30 years. He prayed all 5 decades. He used the beads his mother had given him on his wedding day. He knew every prayer by heart. How could his rosary be dead? And Padre Pio told him, not gently, not with the soft pastoral tone of a priest comforting a struggling soul, but with the sharp, urgent voice of a man who can see a house on fire while the person inside insists everything is fine. Because Padre Pio could see Marco's prayers. He could see them the way you see smoke rising from a chimney. And what he saw was not smoke rising to heaven. What he saw was smoke hitting a ceiling. 5 ceilings, actually. 5 invisible barriers, stacked one on top of the other, sealing Marco's prayers inside a tomb of his own making. Hold on, because the 5 walls that Padre Pio described to Marco that day are not unique to Marco. They are universal. They apply to every Catholic who prays the Rosary, every single one. And the chances that you have at least one of these walls blocking your prayers right now, tonight, at this very moment, are, according to what Padre Pio told his spiritual director, greater than 90%. The first wall is the wall of unforgiveness. Padre Pio told Marco that he could see, attached to Marco's heart like a chain, the image of a face, a man's face. And Padre Pio described that face in detail: the thick eyebrows, the scar on the left cheek, the crooked nose that had been broken in a fight decades ago. Marco went white, because the face Padre Pio was describing was his brother, Salvatore, the brother who had cheated him out of his share of their father's inheritance 15 years earlier. The brother Marco had not spoken to since. The brother whose name Marco refused to say aloud. The brother Marco hated with a cold, steady, unchanging hatred that had calcified in his heart like stone. Padre Pio said that this unforgiveness was the first and thickest wall between Marco's rosary and heaven. He explained that when Jesus taught the Our Father, the prayer that is part of every rosary, he included a condition that most people recite without thinking: "Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us." As we forgive. Not after we forgive, not when we feel like forgiving. As, at the same time, in the same breath. The forgiveness you ask from God is measured by the forgiveness you give to others. And if you give none, you receive none. And if you pray the Our Father while holding unforgiveness in your heart, you are not praying. You are condemning yourself with your own words. You are literally asking God to treat you the way you treat your brother. Marco's rosary contained 5 Our Fathers. 5 times every night for 30 years, Marco had asked God to forgive him the way he forgave Salvatore, which was not at all. 5 times every night he had, without realizing it, asked God for nothing. And God, bound by his own word, had given him exactly what he asked for. This changed everything for me when I first heard it, because I realized that every time I prayed the Our Father while holding even the smallest resentment, I was building that first wall with my own hands. And I thought about my neighbor in Coventry, the woman who spread rumors about my son when he left the church. I had told myself I had forgiven her, but I had not. Not really. I still crossed the street to avoid her. I still felt my stomach tighten when I saw her at Mass. And every time I prayed, "Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us," I was sealing my own prayers behind a wall of polite, well-managed, carefully controlled unforgiveness. The second wall is the wall of willful distraction. Padre Pio asked Marco what he thought about during the Rosary. Marco hesitated. He said he thought about the mysteries. Sometimes. But sometimes his mind wandered. To the farm, to the unpaid bills, to his wife's illness, to his son's silence. Padre Pio shook his head. He said that was not distraction, that was human weakness, and God understands human weakness. The mind wanders. It is the nature of the mind. What God does not accept, what creates the second wall, is willful distraction. Choosing to think about something else while your mouth says the prayers. And then Padre Pio described what he saw. He said that when Marco prayed the Rosary, he could see the words leaving Marco's mouth like small lights. Each Hail Mary was a tiny flame, rising upward, flickering with the life of the prayer. But as each flame rose, Marco's mind would turn to something else, the farm, the weather, tomorrow's work. And when the mind turned, the flame went out. Like a candle snuffed by a sudden breeze, the word continued upward as smoke, as dead matter, as a prayer that had lost its fire. And dead prayers do not penetrate walls. Only living prayers, prayers animated by the attention and intention of the one who prays them, have the force to break through. Padre Pio told Marco that in his 30 years of nightly rosaries, perhaps 1 decade in 5 was prayed with genuine attention, 1 decade out of 5, which meant that 4/5 of his prayer life had been smoke. Beautiful, habitual, comforting smoke that rose a few inches and dissolved into nothing. But here is the critical point. Padre Pio did not say that a wandering mind invalidates the Rosary. He said that a mind that does not fight to return invalidates it. The difference is everything. Your mind will wander. That is guaranteed. The question is what you do when you notice. If you catch your distraction and gently bring your attention back to the mystery, back to the words, back to the presence of God, that act of returning is itself a prayer. It is an act of love. It tells God that you choose Him over your worries. But if you notice the distraction and allow it to continue, if you consciously decide that your thoughts about tomorrow's tasks are more interesting than the joyful mysteries, then you have willfully chosen the world over God in the middle of prayer. And that choice is a brick in the second wall. The third wall is the wall of mechanical repetition. This is the wall that Padre Pio said was the most common among devout Catholics. Not sinners, not lukewarm believers, devout, faithful, daily rosary Catholics, the ones who have prayed the Rosary so many times that they can do it in their sleep. And many of them, Padre Pio said, essentially do. He told Marco that the Rosary is not a mantra. It is not a repetition designed to empty the mind. It is a meditation. Each decade is a window into a moment of the life of Christ and His Mother. The Annunciation, the Visitation, the Nativity, the Presentation, the Finding in the Temple. These are not just stories, they are living mysteries. They are events that are happening right now in eternity, because eternity does not have a past or a future. When you pray the first joyful mystery, you are not remembering the Annunciation. You are present at the Annunciation. You are standing in that room with Mary. You are hearing the angel's words. You are witnessing the moment when the entire history of salvation turned on one young woman's yes. But Marco, like most Catholics, did not meditate. He counted. He moved his fingers from bead to bead, his lips forming the words of the Hail Mary with the automatic precision of a machine, while his mind was somewhere else entirely, or nowhere at all. The words had become sounds. The prayers had become routine. The mysteries had become invisible. And Padre Pio said that a rosary without meditation on the mysteries is like a body without a soul. It has the form of prayer. It has the appearance of devotion, but it is dead, and the dead do not enter heaven. Now wait, because many people hear this and feel despair. They think, if I have to perfectly meditate on every mystery for the rosary to work, I will never pray a valid rosary in my life. And Padre Pio anticipated this reaction. He told Marco that perfection is not the standard, effort is the standard. God does not ask you to achieve perfect contemplation. He asks you to try, to engage, to look at each mystery, even briefly, even imperfectly, and to let it speak to your heart. Even one moment of genuine contact with a mystery, one moment where you truly see Mary's face at the Annunciation or feel the weight of the cross on Christ's shoulders, that one moment is enough to animate an entire decade. It is the spark that sets the flame. Without it, the decade is dark. With it, even a decade prayed with wandering thoughts and stumbling attention carries the fire of genuine prayer. But here is where things take a turn that I did not expect. And this is the part Padre Pio considered the most important of all. The fourth wall is the wall of unconfessed mortal sin. Padre Pio looked at Marco and saw something else. Something darker than unforgiveness or distraction or mechanical prayer. He saw a stain on Marco's soul, a specific stain, and he described it to Marco with the precision of a surgeon describing a tumor. Padre Pio told Marco that he was carrying an unconfessed mortal sin, a sin so deeply buried, so carefully hidden, that Marco himself had almost forgotten it was there. But almost is not the same as completely. And in the spiritual world, almost forgotten means fully present. Marco's face changed. The blood that had drained when Padre Pio described his brother now rushed back in a flush of shame, because Marco knew exactly what Padre Pio was talking about. 12 years earlier, Marco had done something that he had never told anyone. Not his wife, not his priest, not even God in the confessional. He had confessed around it, near it, beside it, but never it. He had mentioned related sins, smaller sins, sins that orbited the real sin like satellites around a planet. But the planet itself, the central act, the thing he had actually done, remained unconfessed. I will not tell you what Marco's sin was. Padre Pio kept it in the seal of the confessional, and it is not mine to reveal. But what I can tell you is what Padre Pio said about its effect on Marco's prayer life. He said that an unconfessed mortal sin is like a locked door between the soul and God. You can stand on one side and shout. You can pray with all the intensity and devotion and attention in the world, but the door is locked, and the key is confession. Genuine, complete, honest confession. Not the partial confession Marco had been making for 12 years, not the edited version, not the version where you tell the priest everything except the one thing that matters most. Full confession. The kind where you open the door of your soul completely and let the light in, even into the room you have kept locked and dark for over a decade. Marco began to weep. He knelt there in Padre Pio's confessional and wept the way a man weeps when the last wall of pretense collapses and there is nothing left between him and the truth. And Padre Pio waited. He did not rush him. He did not judge him. He simply waited, the way God waits, the way the father in the parable waited for the prodigal son, with a patience that is not the absence of expectation, but the fullness of love. And then Marco confessed, really confessed. For the first time in 12 years, he said the words he had been terrified to say. He named the sin. He described it. He did not excuse it or minimize it or explain it away. He simply put it on the table between himself and Christ, there in the darkness of the confessional, and said, "This is what I did." And Padre Pio absolved him And Marco said later that when the words of absolution were spoken, he felt something physical happen in his chest, as if a hand had reached inside him and removed a stone that had been sitting on his heart for 12 years. Not gradually, not over time, in an instant. The weight lifted, the door opened, and for the first time in more than a decade, Marco felt that his prayers might actually have somewhere to go. But there was still one more wall, and this fifth wall, Padre Pio said, was the most subtle and the most dangerous of all, because the other four walls are built by specific sins, specific failures, specific choices. They have clear causes and clear solutions, but the fifth wall is built by something that does not look like a sin at all. In fact, it often looks like virtue. The fifth wall is the wall of secret attachment. Padre Pio explained it to Marco this way. He said that every human heart has rooms. Some rooms are open to God. You invite him in. You let him see everything. Your prayers, your good works, your acts of charity, your struggles, your failures, your triumphs. These rooms are lit by grace, but almost every heart, Padre Pio said, has one room that remains closed, one room where you keep something that you love more than God, not consciously, not deliberately, but truly. A room where you have placed something, a desire, a comfort, a habit, a relationship, a possession, a dream, and you have quietly, without ever saying it aloud, told God that this room is off limits. You can have everything else, but not this. It might be a relationship that you know is wrong, but refuse to end. It might be a financial habit that you know is unjust, but refuse to change. It might be a comfort of the flesh that you have decided is too deeply part of your life to surrender. It might be an ambition that has become an idol. It might be a resentment that you have decided to keep because releasing it would feel like losing. Whatever it is, it sits in that closed room like a rival god. And as long as it sits there, your rosary will hit the ceiling. Because the rosary is not just a prayer, it is an act of total surrender. Every Hail Mary is a declaration that Mary's yes is your yes, her fiat, her let it be done unto me according to thy word. The entire rosary is built on the foundation of a woman who held nothing back from God. Nothing. Not her comfort, not her reputation, not her plans, not her safety, not even her son. She gave everything. And when you pray the rosary while holding something back, while keeping one room locked, you are praying a prayer of total surrender while living a life of partial surrender. And that contradiction is the fifth wall, the wall built not by sin, but by reservation, not by rebellion, but by hesitation, not by hatred of God, but by love of something else. Padre Pio told Marco to go home and find that room. Find the thing he had placed in it, and then make a choice. Not a promise, not a plan, a choice. To open the door and let God in, or to keep it closed and accept that his rosary would remain dead. Marco went home to Cerignola, and over the following weeks, something extraordinary happened. He went to his brother Salvatore. For the first time in 15 years, he knocked on his brother's door. He did not demand the inheritance. He did not rehash the betrayal. He simply said, I forgive you, and he asked Salvatore to forgive him for 15 years of hatred. The first wall fell. He began praying the rosary with attention. Not perfect attention, human attention, the kind that wanders and returns, like a child learning to walk, but genuine attention, the kind that costs something. He started with 1 decade, prayed with focus, and built from there. The second wall cracked. He began meditating on the mysteries. He bought a small book of meditations and read a paragraph before each decade. Simple reflections. Nothing elaborate, but enough to light the spark, enough to place himself inside the mystery, even for a moment. The third wall crumbled. He had already confessed his hidden sin in Padre Pio's confessional. The fourth wall was gone. And the fifth wall, Marco found his closed room. He found the thing he loved more than God, and he made the hardest choice of his life. I will not tell you what it was, because that too is part of a man's private journey with God. But I will tell you what happened after. Remember what Padre Pio said at the beginning. Out of every 100 rosaries, fewer than 10 reach heaven. Marco had been praying dead rosaries for 30 years. 30 years of nightly devotion that went nowhere. 30 years of beads passing through faithful fingers, while 5 invisible walls trapped every prayer between the floor and the ceiling. But now, for the first time, the walls were down. Every single one. The unforgiveness dissolved by the tears on his brother's doorstep. The distraction challenged by a new discipline of attention. The mechanical repetition broken by genuine meditation on the mysteries. The unconfessed sin purged in the confessional. The secret attachment surrendered in the privacy of his own heart. For the first time in 30 years, Marco's rosary had a clear path to heaven. And what happened next was something that even Marco, a practical farmer who distrusted anything he could not see with his own eyes, could only describe as miraculous. Within 3 months, the drought that had plagued Marco's farm for 3 years broke. Rain came, not a little rain, rain that soaked the ground so deeply that the following year's harvest was the largest Marco had ever seen. His wife's mysterious illness began to improve. The doctors could not explain it. They changed nothing in her treatment. The condition simply began to reverse itself, slowly, steadily, like a tide turning. And his son wrote home. After 6 months of silence, a letter arrived, short, awkward but real. And in the letter his son said something that made Marco sit down at the kitchen table and cry. He said, "I have started praying again." Padre Pio never took credit for what happened to Marco. He never claimed that the rain came because of anything he did. He simply said that when the 5 walls come down, the rosary flows. And when the rosary flows, heaven responds. Not always in the way we expect, not always on our timeline, but always. Always. Because the rosary, when it is prayed as it was meant to be prayed, with forgiveness, attention, meditation, a clean soul and total surrender, is not just a prayer. It is a channel of grace so powerful that Padre Pio himself said it could stop wars, close the gates of hell, and change the course of nations. And he said this not as metaphor. He said it as fact, as someone who could see with his own eyes the spiritual reality of what a single properly prayed rosary accomplishes in the invisible world. I experienced this myself. After I learned about the 5 walls, after I forgave my neighbor in Coventry, after I began truly meditating on the mysteries instead of racing through the beads, something shifted. It was during my husband's illness in 2003. The doctors had given him months. I started praying the rosary differently, not more, not louder, differently, with every wall torn down as best I could manage. And 6 months later, the cancer was gone. The doctors used words like spontaneous remission and unexplained resolution. But I knew what had happened. My rosary had finally reached heaven. For the first time in years, the line was open, and heaven responded. He described it once to a group of spiritual children gathered around him in the garden of the friary. He said that a properly prayed rosary rises from the person like a column of light. It passes through the ceiling of the room, through the roof of the house, through the atmosphere, through the layer where demons patrol, trying to intercept prayers, and it reaches the feet of the Blessed Virgin Mary herself. And when it arrives, Mary takes it in her hands and presents it to her son. And her son, who can refuse his mother nothing, acts upon it. Not because he is obligated, not because the rosary is a magical formula, but because the rosary, properly prayed, is the prayer of his mother. And Jesus, who honored his mother on earth, continues to honor her in heaven. But when the walls are up, Padre Pio said, the column of light never forms. Instead of light, what rises is smoke, And smoke, no matter how much of it there is, no matter how fervently it is produced, dissipates in the air and reaches nothing. The demons that patrol the spiritual atmosphere do not even need to intercept it. It never gets high enough for them to bother with. It simply dissolves. And the person below, kneeling faithfully with rosary in hand, sees nothing, feels nothing, changes nothing, and wonders year after year why God seems so far away. The same rosary that is the most powerful weapon in the spiritual arsenal can become the most frustrating exercise in futility. The same beads that could channel the grace of heaven can sit lifeless in your hands like pieces of wood and string. The difference is not the rosary. The difference is you. The rosary is always ready. The rosary is always powerful. The question is whether the person holding it has cleared the path between their heart and heaven. You have now heard what Padre Pio told Marco Pellegrini in that confessional in 1955. You know the 5 walls: unforgiveness, willful distraction, mechanical repetition, unconfessed mortal sin, secret attachment. And you know that the vast majority of rosaries prayed in the world today are hitting one or more of these walls and going nowhere. This channel exists to bring you truths like this. The teachings that Padre Pio shared, not from a pulpit, but in the intimate darkness of the confessional. The spiritual realities that he could see and that he desperately tried to communicate to anyone who would listen. Every video is the result of deep research into testimonies, letters, and accounts from those who knew him personally. And if what you learned today has shifted something in your spirit, if you feel that your rosary might finally have a chance to break through, then I want you to know that you can support this mission. The Super Thanks button below is not just a donation. It is your declaration that these hidden truths deserve to reach every Catholic soul that is praying in darkness, wondering why heaven seems silent. You are part of Padre Pio's ongoing mission to repair the invisible world, and he promised that those who spread divine truth will be protected by divine truth. But I do not want to leave you with 5 walls and no hope. That is not what Padre Pio would do. That is not what God does. And so I want to tell you something that Padre Pio told Marco on the day they parted, and something that I carry in my heart every time I pick up my own rosary. He said that God does not expect perfection. He expects honesty. He does not demand that you demolish all 5 walls in a single night. He asks that you look at them honestly, identify which ones are blocking your prayer, and begin tonight to take them down 1 brick at a time. Start with the first wall. Is there someone you have not forgiven? You do not need to feel forgiveness. Forgiveness is not a feeling, it is a decision, a choice of the will. Say the words, even if your heart does not yet believe them. Lord, I choose to forgive. And mean it as a choice, not as an emotion. The emotion will follow in its own time. But the wall begins to crack the moment the choice is made. Address the second wall. Tonight, when you pray, fight for your attention. When your mind wanders, bring it back, gently, without anger at yourself. The act of returning is the prayer. Engage the third wall. Before each decade, read or think about the mystery. Even 1 sentence, even 1 image, enough to light the spark. Confront the fourth wall. If there is something you have not confessed, go to confession. This week, not next month, not during Lent. This week, find a priest. Say the words, open the locked door, and face the 5th wall. Find your closed room. The thing you love more than God, you know what it is. You have always known. You do not need me to tell you. And ask yourself if you are ready to open that door. Not tomorrow, not someday. Tonight, in the silence of your own heart, between you and God. Are you ready to surrender everything? Because if you are, if you can say yes the way Mary said yes at the Annunciation, without conditions, without reservations, without a safety net, then your rosary will no longer hit the ceiling. It will rise like a column of fire through every barrier, past every demon, straight to the feet of the Mother of God. And she will take it in her hands, and she will present it to her son, and her son will act. Padre Pio said it. I believe it. And as long as there is life, there is hope. As long as there is breath in your body and a rosary in your hands, it is never too late to tear down the walls. It is never too late to let your prayer fly. It is never too late to discover what the rosary was always meant to do in your life, in your family, in your parish, and in the world. The power was always there. The weapon was always loaded. You simply need to clear the path. And tonight, with the grace of God and the intercession of Padre Pio, you can begin. Now I want to hear from you. Which of the 5 walls hit you the hardest? Which one did you hear and immediately know that it was yours? Type the number in the comments. 1 for unforgiveness, 2 for willful distraction, 3 for mechanical repetition, 4 for unconfessed sin, 5 for secret attachment. Be honest, because your honesty in this moment is itself the beginning of the demolition. And share this video with one person who prays the Rosary, because there is a very good chance that their prayer, like Marco's, is hitting a ceiling they cannot see. And tonight might be the night that changes.